What's up, YouTube? So today I wanted to do a video about my favorite Star Wars author. I actually haven't revealed that on my YouTube channel. I know I have on Instagram, but I haven't here. Um, it's Kevin J. Anderson. Kevin J. Anderson is my favorite. I know that's a very unpopular pick. Others would pick James Luceno or Timothy Zahn or Troy Denning. I know Noah wouldn't pick Troy Denning. um, but I picked Kevin J. Anderson. Um, and I understand that a lot of his stories do have a lot of weird stuff in it, you know. Um, and there's some things he's done narratively that is questionable in some of his stories. But I think you can apply that to any author, to be honest. I don't think that's mutually exclusive to him. But his stories, if there's anything I can say about his stories, they are the epitome of everything George Lucas wrote. What I mean by that is the heart and soul of Star Wars are in literally all of his stories, from Tales of the Jedi to the Jedi Academy trilogy, and some of the other comics he's written, Jedi Academy Leviathan, for example. He, the heart and soul of Star Wars is just in it. Some of the core themes that we find in the original trilogy are just spread throughout his stories. And his stories, a lot of them are actually very simple. They're not very complex at all. A lot of his stories follow your classic hero's journey. I think his Jedi Academy trilogy is a great example of that. Um, and to a degree, his Tales of the Jedi stuff, his Young Jedi Knight stuff, they all follow kind of a hero's journey. And I'm a big hero's journey fan anyway. Or at least it follows it loosely. It may not be, exactly what Campbell outlined it as, but similar to it. Um, he has themes of family all throughout his books. He has themes of hope and um, some of these values that I really treasure in Star Wars. Along with that, his stories are almost very mythical. They're very much fantasy. It feels like they're a lot more fantasy than they are science fiction, and I love that as well. Star Wars. Star Wars is almost always better when it's more fantasy than science fiction because that's what it is. It's a space fantasy. People will argue about the genre of Star Wars. It's a space fantasy. It's a fantasy set in space with science fiction technology. And Kevin really understands that. I think he really emphasizes that, and it's a real shame he never really went on until the Del Rey era. It would have been cool to see, uh, maybe if he wrote a story in the New Jedi Order or somewhere else, would have been cool to see that, but he never really did. Um, so he only did stuff for the early Dark Horse era and then the Bantam era. Um, but I mean, more of a personal story I can share. I remember opening up Jedi Search for the first time, and that was, of course, my first Kevin J. Anderson story was this Jedi Academy trilogy. I remember reading the first chapter of it and just being I was in English class, I was freshman in high school, and I was kind of just blown away. I mean, I know what happens is basically Han and Chewie go to Kessel and they are shot down and they crash land, but it just it just felt so much like Star Wars. It was weird, and then I kept reading and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with what he was writing there. And a lot of the characters, Gantor, Strain, Karana T, Kip Duron, Sigal, so many of those characters. Cam So you saw that was Dark Empire, but he also had a role in Jedi Academy. Um, it was just great, and then of course Exar Kun was in that series, his spirit at least. Dolib was in it. uh, Indala, I think if I had any sort of critique against that trilogy, it would actually be Dala. She's a good character, but she doesn't really win anything. She keeps losing, and I know some people like that, but I'm kind of like, can you win at least once? She was a cool character, and I liked her backstory though. But it was just great. It was very fantasy, and then the way Champions of the Force kind of ended it, I really liked how they ended Exar Kun. They all the Jedi, coming together as one and defeating him together. I really like that strong that sense of unity, in that sense, kind of a found family. I love stories like that, and um, it was just great. It was great to read. And then, of course, my next story with him was, I believe I was reading. I don't remember when I read Tales of the Jedi for the first time, but I know it was after I read Jedi Academy, and then I read Darksaber, and I remember being blown away with that book. And people crap all over Darksaber, and it's like, why? The only critique I've ever heard for that book is that the Darksaber, the super weapon, isn't actually used. It's like, okay, is that the best you got? Does that make the whole book bad because of that one thing that it? No, I mean, there's so much in that with Pavel Lamelisk, his backstory, and then Kip and Dorsk 81's story, and then Dorsk 81's sacrifice, and then um, just all of that. I thought Durga the Hutt was a good villain, to be honest. I didn't really have a problem with Durga the Hutt. Um, I thought it was neat. And then seeing Dala and Pelion unite, and then, of course, that awesome scene where Pelion and Dala, mainly Dala, Pelion's kind of just amazed at what he's even watching, but Dala is straight up just gassing most of the Imperial warlords, and Darksaber had such an impact for the overall continuity. I mean, and if you actually see after that, you don't see the Empire very much up until the Hand of Thrawn in the comics. You don't really see much of the Empire. You see the Empire Reborn and the Crystal Star and Jedi Outcast. Um, you see smaller Imperial factions like Queller's faction from the New Rebellion, but you don't really see any more of the actual true Empire, Pelion's Empire, the Imperial Remnant, until the Hand of Thrawn duology. Um, so it had a huge impact, and it basically ended up uniting the Empire under Pelion, because Dala, she fell to destroy Dala and Pelion attacked the Praxium on Yavin 4, and of course they failed to destroy it. And Dala kind of just, I guess she got tired of losing, um, and then she kind of went off on her own. But it was just good. It was so good. Such a good book. And then, of course, his tells. I know he wrote that with Tom Beach, but I always forget Veach had an involvement. But I know that his Golden Age of the Sith and Fall of the Sith Empire story, those two trades. In fact, I just reread Golden Age of the Sith. That's kind of what prompted this video, because I wanted to talk about Kevin. But it was just great stuff, man. And that story has a very much a fantasy feel to it. It doesn't even feel science fiction. It has a very fantasy feel to it. And then, of course, some of my favorite moments of that series is the moments with Jory and Gav, as siblings, you know. And I felt so sorry for both of them when they were split up. Even before that, when they were imprisoned on Ziost, and they're told they're gonna die, and they're like, "Well, we're gonna die worthless," and it was just sad. It was so sad, but it was so good at the same time. I'll probably refollow the Sith Empire a little later, but of course I know what happens, and I've already read it. I should say I'm going to reread it, but it's just great stuff. Um, and then of course I know that a lot of the stuff with Exar Kun will then transfer over to the Jedi Academy trilogy. Um, it was just so good. It's so good to see. Um, it was just a lot of fun to read. And of course, another great story that was a lot of fun is Young Jedi Knights, right? He wrote that with his wife, Rebecca Moesta. That series is just amazing too. It's like that has so much of what I love about Star Wars in it. And what's interesting is that is a coming of age story, and typically I don't like them because coming of age stories are just lame. They're all the same typically. But obviously, Young Jedi Knights is a lot different because it's in Star Wars, but it's it was so good. He gave he I mean he gave Jason and Jaina a proper character, and then he created two other characters that were just great, Tenoka and Loe. And of course, those are great characters. Tenoka being my favorite of I guess all of the new characters in that series. In fact, I think I prefer Tenoka than I did Jason and Jaina. Um, and then seeing their adventures, fighting Brachus and the Shadow Academy, and then Nola Tarkana and the Diversity Alliance, and then Anya Galandro. Um, just great stuff. Great stuff. And what's interesting is he actually had, if I mean, I he actually has a writing credit for Junior Jedi Knights. He helped write that series. That's not a lot of people know that. Which does make sense. That's kind of Young Jedi Knights. That's Young Jedi Knight's sister series. So that series also was a great too. Of course, I think I prefer Junior Jedi Knights than Young Jedi Knights. You guys know me, big Anakin Solo fan, but um, yeah, it was just great. Jedi Academy Leviathan is a story he also did, a comic series, a miniseries, a 4-issue miniseries. A lot of people don't like it. I thought it was cool. I enjoyed it. It introduced again some more fantasy like storytelling with the Sith Leviathan. Um, it was just great. It's so good, and that about staying in your own sandbox. That's kind of what Timothy Zahn did, and then Kevin did that as well. Probably better than anyone, I would say. But it was just great. So his stories, I mean, to kind of summarize, his stories have the true feel and heart of Star Wars, and that's why it's my favorite. Now, am I saying he's the best author? Of course not. He's not the best author in terms of his writing, in terms of just comparing it to other stories. But he's my favorite. I mean, I would say a better. I think Timothy Zahn's a better author than him. A better, maybe not a better author, but a better writer. I know that's kind of the same thing, but I don't know. I guess I see those different. I don't know. Anyway, Tim is a better writer, I'd say, but I think Kevin J. Anderson just had better stories. Um, so that's all I've got to say. Yep, that's my favorite author. Thanks for watching.